You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in.
There's a lot of cool history here. Well, like Tubman ran through here, right? We have a ton with her. Edgar Allan Poe died a few blocks from my house. The Star-Spangled Banner was written here. There's a lot of really cool history in Baltimore.
I got to cut this short. I'm going up to Smalltimore today. I love it.
So how do you know Edgar? How do you know Edgar, though? You mean the poet?
Yeah, the bar he drank at last is still there. There's a seat there, and he died just a few blocks away from where I live now.
Are you allowed to sit in that seat? Are you allowed to sit in the chair or no?
Yeah, you can go there. It's called the Horse You Came In On Saloon. It's down in Fells, in the Historic District. And he stumbled up Broadway and he died. He died on Broadway. And for years, have you guys ever heard of the Poe Toaster?
No, the Poe Toaster.
Some mystery person for decades on Poe's birthday would leave whiskey on his grave. No one knew who it was. No one was able to catch him, and they stopped a few years ago.
Wow.
Interesting.
Was it a particular brand of whiskey, or was it?
That I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea. Nobody knew who it was.
This is fascinating.
Yeah. I love this stuff.
You're already crushing our show already. We're not even in the show. This is amazing.
Welcome back, everyone, to Remotely One. We're no longer referring to ourselves as Remotely We Are One, are we, Kaleem?
No more. Just the Remotely One podcast, bro.
Yes, Remotely One podcast. I'm your host, Rick Haney, joined by my esteemed colleague, and I must say, you're looking very fashionable and handsome today, Kaleem Clarkson.
Oh, I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
It's got to be the new background.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's not a background, sir. We're in the studio together.
Yes. Yeah, it's studio. The background in the studio.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Hey, listeners, since you know how to find us, do us a huge favor and hop on over to ratethispodcast.com/remotely1 and leave us a review. If you could do that, we would be ever so thankful. Since 2016, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 2,500 Slack members and 4,000 email subscribers. I can't believe we got numbers that big. That's crazy.
We're going to keep going. We're doing this.
We're doing it, man. We're doing it. Hey, it's free to join. So go to check us out at remotely1.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, what do we got going on today?
I'm a little nerved up.
I am too.
As I usually am. Every single guest makes me a little nervous. But today's guests, they are originally from Baltimore, a.k.a. Smalltimore. I love it. I love it.
That's the most brilliant thing I'll hear today, I think.
Smalltimore. Love it. And yes, everybody who's out there who's not from there, my first thought is, have you seen The Wire? Can't help it. Can't help it. But listen, The Wire is not, it's not the only depiction of Baltimore. Is that right, guest? Is that right?
We have so much more here to offer, but it's a little bit true as well.
Crack. The other thing about our guest is she's kind of like Rage Against the Machine a little bit. She's always been against the power. And like she's always been fight the power. Fight the power that be, you know?
Yeah.
So much that she didn't attend her last year of high school, Rick. She didn't even attend.
Kind of am the machine if you think about it.
You just didn't show up. But you got it done.
Yeah. Well, let's just frame that a little bit. She just decided to not go but do her work, which kind of fits into like what we're talking about now, bro. Oh. Like back in high school, she's like, man, this is some bullshit. I can do my own thing. I'm going to do all my homework because I'm going to graduate, but I'm going to do it on my own.
Wish I'd learned that 30 years ago. No big deal.
Yeah. You're too busy giving people wedgies. Such a meanie.
I resent that.
It's not true. He's a nice guy.
You might have been getting wedgies playing the tuba.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she was a band geek. That's what we found out. She was a band geek, a fellow band geek, Rick.
Yeah.
Talk about the band, right? She was in band. Weren't you in band?
I was in band.
I was very briefly in the band. But
What'd you play, sir? What'd you play?
Tuba.
There's nothing wrong with the tuba, guy. It's a great instrument.
I'm a drummer. I didn't want to play the tuba. There's nothing wrong with tuba players. I'm just embarrassed because I never figured out how to play it. I just sat there and moved the valves around and made it look like I was doing something. Let's be honest.
Guest, what did you play? What did you play, guest and band?
I played a variety of saxophones, my favorite being the alto.
I love it.
Okay. Our guest still plays a little bit. She also played the saxophone. Okay. Also, she's been fully remote. She's been fully remote since day one with a company. And I'm going to get to the company in a second, but she's been remote since day one. And she has worked with just a few brands. Okay. Let's just hear some of the brands that she's worked with. Hellman's, StubHub, Pepsi. No big deal.
Goodness.
No big deal. And you know what? She supports our troops. She supports our government. Although she's, fighting the power. She's also worked with the U.S. Department of State. So they're legit.
We're not playing around today, I see.
Not at all. Not at all. Last but not least, she is the founder and CEO for Backroom, which is a brand strategy agency. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Kara Redman.
Welcome, Kara.
Woo! Let's go.
Thanks for joining us.
That's fun to hear.
So, Kara, real quick before we get into some serious questions here, can you tell us a little bit about the saxophone and you being... Well, actually, I want to hear more about band camp because, that's what everybody wants to know. When you hear someone was in band, they're like, oh, did you go to band camp? So can you tell us, I don't know, some of your band experiences?
I will never share that, and only because Justin Rogers, if you're listening, you stole my heart when I was 15 and I never forgot you.
Justin, you done screwed up, son. That's the shout out you don't want, Justin Rogers.
Justin, I'm sure you're probably happily involved in your situation, Justin, but you stole our guest heart.
Yeah, what happens in the band is sacred. I will say band, especially if you're in the marching band, if you get that privilege in high school, it's very similar to military in terms of how much you bond. Because you're out there, it's hot, it's sweltering, you've got to hold your instrument. If you're playing the tuba, it's even worse, right? Bigger the instrument, the more the exertion. You got to stand for long periods of time. You have to memorize where you have to stand and when. It's very rigorous. So the bonding that happens in that high school experience is pretty intense.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I couldn't have answered that any better as a former band geek myself.
I watch the band championships all the time on ESPN with all the HBCUs that participate. It's crazy what y'all do. So check it out. Check out the national band. And Justin, if you're out there, you stole our heart, bro. You stole our heart.
Do the right thing, Justin.
Do the right thing, bud. Oh, so much good stuff. I'm enjoying this already. She's great.
This is great. Kara, you've had some really cool experiences. Can you think of any of them that directly or even indirectly may have led to your discovery of remote work? And was it like some sort of discovery or like a light bulb that went off that said, I don't want this office stuff. I want to work from home and I'm going to help other people do it?
Yeah, there was a moment for me for sure. So I had the opportunity at my last agency to go on my honeymoon and also had an opportunity to spend a few weeks in Germany where my now ex-husband's family is from. I had to choose because I had 2 weeks of vacation. And there were obviously a number of things leading up to it and just my anti-authoritative nature. And I really do put everything into my work. I don't have that ability to detach as some people can in this quiet quitting stuff. Like if I'm working on a project, I'm in it, I'm thinking about it. I'm very attached to outcomes, very type A. And I had to choose between the two. And guys, when I chose and I was sitting in my seat during one of the things that, the item that I didn't do, which was going to Germany, my ex-husband's over there, he's enjoying family and doing all this stuff. There was nothing to do at work. It was a slow week and I was just a butt in a seat. And I just had this moment where I'm like, I'm over here shopping online. Half my peers aren't even at work. Nobody's showing up. And I'm missing my life. For what? For what?
Wow.
Right.
And I remember asking them, like, hey, can I do this? Can I just work remotely? And they said, no, because if we let you do it, we'd have to let everyone. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of the point. You know, we had a lot of people there with family, like back in the Middle East. Yes, let them do that. If they're getting their work done, a lot of them are engineers, for crying out loud. You don't have to be physically in a space. To me, I just couldn't do it anymore. And, you know, I'd have people ask me about the courage to start a new business. And it's like, it's not courageous to do this. It was sick. I couldn't do it anymore. You know, and there's only so long you can continue to show up and just sit there and have your soul sucked versus I got to take a risk and do something else because this is not sustainable.
Wow. So roughly, Kara, what year was that roughly, just to give us a little bit of
It
context?
was 9 years ago this week.
Wow. Do you all hear that? That's why we're doing this show, right, Rick?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like you and I have a lot in common too, because that is where I've kind of led my path. I just got sick of the status quo and being away from my family. It's an incredible burden when you break it down. Going to work for someone else on their time, sacrificing your own, is an enormous sacrifice. It's like you said, it's soul sucking.
Yeah. And what I really love about interviewing awesome guests like yourself, Kara, is this is not a fad thing. We started researching remote work in 2013. You said 9 years ago. So listeners, viewers, just for context, this is not just a thing that started in 2020. And for a lot of people, it is. So how we met Kara was on a LinkedIn post. Thank you for commenting and being passionate. I couldn't find it. I was searching. It's so hard to find people's comments when you connect. It was really hard. But I do remember roughly what it was. And your comment was so gangster. That's why I loved it. I mean, it definitely had some Baltimore in it. I'm just saying. And you were like something along the lines of, I treat my employees like adults and they get their work done. So that's why we've been remote first from day one. Can you just talk about when you decided to start your company? Obviously, you were having that feeling from your own experience. But as a business owner, it's a little bit different. You're going to have other people. How did you decide to say, hey, the company in itself, when we do start bringing people on, I want them to be remote too? Did you actually have to make that decision, or was that, no, I'm starting this company and everyone's going to be remote, like you were already thinking that?
I wasn't even thinking about what it was going to be or what it wasn't going to be. I was thinking, I want to build something where people want to work and people will thrive and do great work. So I'm going to listen to the people that are coming in here and we can build it together. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm taking orders from everyone who works for me. I still have some structure and vision for what I want the company to be. But I will never forget what it feels like to sit in that position and go, hey, this is what I need to do really great work for your company to make you richer. And being told no, I'm never going to do that to somebody. And to me, I'm sure I'm a business owner. Yes, I'm a brand strategist, but I'm a human first. And I'm very aware of the finite amount of time that I have on this planet. I'm one of those people that's like, the clock was ticking from the moment I came out of the womb. Like, what am I making of the time that I have here? And this short-sightedness about like what something has to be within a business. What are you going to be thinking about when you're dying? What did you leave? What legacy did you leave? How did you make people feel? Were you able to help the people behind you, right? I'm not slamming the door shut for people behind me because I want them to work a certain way. And it pisses me off that we have people in leadership that are just getting richer, telling people how to do their jobs, telling people how to live, telling them what hours they have to be productive. It's bananas to me. It just never occurred to me to tell a grown ass adult when and how to produce something for me. It's crazy. To me, it's just a different mindset of I don't feel like I own people who work for me. Me being a business owner is not glorified slavery to me. We're a team. You add value, I add value, we all add value to each other's lives and to the lives of our clients. And we figure out how to do that together, because otherwise I'm pretending like I have all the answers. And most of the time I'm clueless. So I can ask my team, the best way of doing things, and we figure it out together. My director of operations lives in Portland. I live in Baltimore. We figure it out.
Yeah.
Hero, Kara.
You're our hero.
Should we end the episode now, bro?
It was so good to meet you both. See you in bands.
My life just changed. I felt like you were saying the words that have been in my head for, well, maybe not so much anymore, but, leading up to my direction with remote work. Like, I had a guy tell me once, he hired me for my experience because there was an area of his company that he just didn't know how to run, which is why he hired me for my experience. And then when I came to him with the solutions to his problems, he didn't utilize any of them. And I said, well, can I ask why? And you know what his response was? He literally said, because I'm the boss, I get to make that decision, and I've been doing it this way for years. And I said, well, why did you hire me?
For validation.
Yeah.
Validation.
I don't know, he says, but you're making me regret it. I said,
my gosh. You said so many things. Like, by the way, if we're definitely going to cut that up because you were on fire, Kara. There's a couple of things that I just want to talk about that you said in there. Like, first off, grown-ass person, I'm going to tell them. And then the other thing is yes, we always forget we are making the company money. Like, it's so easy to get sucked into this idea of thank you for this job. We're always like, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this job. How about you're welcome?
Right. It's a privilege to have people working for me. I'm like, you're choosing to put your soul and energy and brain space into something that I'm building. What a privilege. What a privilege.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know why you were told that, Rick? It's because there's a huge market for mediocrity. And I don't think it's a bad thing. Think about just middle America is just a lot of the same strip malls over and over and over. But there's tremendous value in that because it serves a need for a lot of people. Challenging the status quo is not for everyone. Not everyone can be a top performer, right?
Right.
So it's okay for that guy to say, you know what? I don't want you to challenge me. I'm good here. I'm not going to grow. I'm going to stay here. But it's just, that doesn't check any boxes for me. And it doesn't sound like it does for you either.
Me neither. Certainly not for me. And, he was one of these guys that thought that I owed him a debt of gratitude for taking the job to begin with. What else was I going to be doing? Well, when I turned to him, one of the last things I said to him before I left the company was, working here, I feel like I am so far out of alignment with my purpose. And I thought he would understand, like, okay, well, this isn't a fit for you, right? And he said, I don't understand. You should be thanking me for this opportunity. I'm paying you, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you just defined why I'm out of alignment. I'm not here for that. And
you know why he doesn't understand? Because people like that, money's the only driver in their lives.
That's it. That's it. There's nothing else.
True.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you how to make money and have purpose, because to me, they're not mutually exclusive. I'm like, let me show you how to take care of other people and to do the right thing, even though it's harder, and outperform you at the same time.
Yeah.
There was something else that you were saying too, that I just love your position on how you see humans. And I think you said human first. I just think that now, especially after the pandemic, organizations who do not think about this, it's going to impact their brand. Now we're kind of moving a little bit into your expertise. The fact that you are one of the top brand companies out there, being authentic and speaking in the way you are, you can tell it's part of your brand and that you're passionate about that. So could you just talk a little bit about how organizations need to think about their stance on return to work or return to office if you're a new company, or this movement towards workplace flexibility, and whether that's going to impact their brand? I mean, you have the consumer brand, but you also have your employer brand. So could you talk a little bit about that? I think it's very interesting that you're a brand expert. and you have those views. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because there is not one size fits all, right? And you'll talk to a lot of folks that do want to come into the office. There's folks that do want to be part of a team in person. I think that the key is listening and responding. Because something works for me and my team does not mean it's going to work for you and your team, right? And I think that a lot of times we get into this, what are others adjacent to us doing, and let's implement that. You can't do that ever as a leader, as any organization. You have to listen to what your people want. Like if my team were to call me up and say, listen, we really need to do more in-person stuff, then we would be problem solving around that, whether it's flying together a couple times a year or finding co-working spaces and other creatives for them to work with. I would adapt to that, right? And I think that we get into this fear-based approach as leaders sometimes about a lot of different numbers of business metrics and just really wanting to have control. And when I talk about human first, we're messy, right? We're messy, we're unpredictable, day to day, different emotions, different needs. Everyone has different boxes to check. But if you're constantly open as a leader and okay with the fact that maybe someone's going to leave that you thought was really valuable to your business, or maybe somebody had a need that you weren't able to predict, and actually listening to those people, taking it to heart and working it into your business operations, whether that's remote work or finding a really cool co-working space, then you're building something for people. You're building something where they can thrive. It doesn't necessarily have to be remote, but I think it's just that self-awareness as a leader and not leading with fear, leading from a place of love and compassion, and then being able to build your business around the needs of those actual humans. And it's tricky. You can't make everyone happy. You can't be all things to all people. But as long as that conversation's happening, I think people feel safe.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's one of those reasons that managers are having such a hard time adjusting to this back to work / remote thing is simply because they don't have the wherewithal or the people skills to bend and adapt? I mean, do you see that a lot?
I can only speculate, right? Because I am only in my own stuff. But the things that I feel I'm seeing are, number one, it's really difficult to be self-aware. I saw something recently, like 10 to 15% of people walking around this planet have self-awareness. I was like, oh, that all makes sense, right? So I think that self-reflection is really difficult. There's a lot of ego in work. There's a hierarchical nature to corporate America that I think we're still dismantling and will for a long time. I think the self-awareness is hard. Of course, people skills are hard because we project right onto other humans. Like if somebody gives us feedback or they're hurting, a lot of us will take that into our own personal identity, right? So that's a challenge. Third, and I think most important, is a lot of leaders don't have business metrics, right? So if I can't see you here at 9 and see you leave at 5, I don't know if my business is successful. What?
Yeah.
So having performance metrics and being able to look at those. I mean, my art director, after, a year or so working together, said, God, you know what happened when I started working remote? We started doing this. He's like, I can get a lot done in 4 hours, because you don't have all the other stuff. You're not stressed because you got hard pants on and you're driving to the office, or do I like what I packed for lunch? Did I forget my lunch? All those distractions go away. And you just focus on the work. And I think that by not having actual metrics for your business that roll into the individual roles of the people that you have there, it's just like common business sense to me. But a lot don't do it. They really do measure the success of their business based on who's there during a physical time.
Yeah, a lot of that I think is, like you touched on it before, it's just human nature. They lack a lot of the skills, but the chief skill there is that it's just control issues. They have this weird hierarchical sense of entitlement, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's fear-based, right? It comes from a place of fear.
Agreed.
I don't want to prowl on them while they're down, but the other thing is like, it's new and change is tough. It's how a lot of managers were managed when they were not a manager. It's how they learned to crawl their way up to the top, how to look busy, how to show up and say, good morning, Kara. Good morning, Rick. In their best Eddie Murphy voice, so that I'm just here to purchase this paper. Yeah. So you do have to give a little bit of empathy for people who are trying to adjust. But Kara, it's literally what we talk with most of our clients about. what are your metrics that you're going to use to ensure that they're getting the job done? You talked earlier about strictly results. You love deadlines, and to kind of shift from that tap on the shoulder management style, it takes a lot of effort. You got to make sure your policies are in line. You got to make sure all the documentation's there. It's a lot of effort if you haven't been doing it. I know it's hard, but we've learned that under forced situations over the past few years, we can figure it out if we're forced to. And I think that's what's happened. People were forced to figure it out, and that's why we're not going back, I don't think.
Right.
You're right. It is hard work. And I always say, like, doing the right thing is always more work. Doing the right thing is always harder. And I think that if you put systems in place that allow people to be people, then you're going to win. And I think that the empathy and the compassion piece is right. There's a lot of unlearning. And unfortunately, still today, most of people in leadership are male, right? And what do we teach men growing up? You can't have compassion. You can't have feelings. You can't be soft, right? The vulnerability piece is really difficult for a lot of men, particularly men in leadership. And it's sad to watch, because when you're able to be flexible, when you're able to show compassion as a man leading people in these organizations, it's seen as a weakness by a lot of peers, right? And it's really unfortunate. So I think that there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen in society as a whole for us to have these opportunities to go in and counsel someone, right? If I go in and I say, hey, I notice that you've been behaving a certain way and I'm here for you and I want to support you, does that make me worried about HR now, right? And a lot of men are saying, I don't really even know how to talk to women in the workplace. I'm like, there's a whole subset of them that are just creepy dudes. But I do have passion for the fact that, like, men haven't been taught how to be soft at all. And now we're bringing all this compassion and empathy into the workplace. And it's how do we unlearn these really shitty behaviors?
I couldn't have put that into better words. I mean, a lot of it, too, is being able to get into that mindset of compassion and having empathy and just being not only a good person, but also a good leader. You know, I think a lot of people just, through no fault of their own, maybe don't possess good leadership skills.
Yeah, unlearning too. I love what you kind of ended there, Kara. It's really difficult to unlearn. Like, you've learned something. I've done this all these times. How do I undo everything that we taught? And that's why, personally, I feel like inclusion and diversity work, when you're working with people, is so emotional. There's so many emotions and there's a lot of feelings that go into that. It's because it's you're talking about a generational thing of being taught somebody is bad because of whatever reason. So, like, trying to unlearn generational teachings is even more difficult. So shout out to all the inclusion and diversity experts out there that are doing the work. It's a tough job, but keep doing your thing.
Yeah, such a great point. I think, like, the leadership piece of it, it's like, you can't say, hey, be vulnerable and open and I'm going to take care of you. As leaders, you have to be the first one to be vulnerable. As a leader, you have to say, hey, my kid's sick and I really can't show up today, right? Like, you have to be able to model those behaviors. It's so much like parenting. And it can feel threatening when our unlearning has to happen, when our beliefs are challenged, right? The Oatmeal has a really great cartoon, if you guys have seen it. It's called You're Not Going to Believe What I'm About to Tell You. Have you guys heard of this?
No.
It's fantastic. If people listening haven't, go and look at it. But he basically is one of my favorite comics, but he walks through what happens to our psyches when new information is presented that challenges our, like, core beliefs, and why we feel defensive and why it hurts and why we try to fight against it rather than receiving that information and being open to changing our minds. We all experience it, right? It's not just unique to assholes. Like, it's just part of the human condition. And that's what I mean by human first. That's what I mean by embracing it, because I got to do it too.
Yeah. So since we're talking about that, dismantling old beliefs and structures and whatnot, how does one go about dismantling the concept of the 9 to 5?
I don't understand the concept of the 9 to 5, right? It's like, if you really think about it, who made these rules? Because I was talking to someone the other day, when I was in my 20s, I worked in this office space that had no windows and we were in cubes. And during this time of year, I literally did not see the light of day. Why would you want your employees to not have sunlight in their lives, right? And it couldn't exist for us and for a lot of companies think even non-remote companies. If you have locations all over the world, there is no such thing as 9 to 5. Everyone has a different time zone. So to me, it's just this construct that makes no sense. I mean, I could have, let's pretend I open physical offices in Baltimore, New Hampshire, Denver, and Portland, right? Where I have people and required us all to do 9 to 5. It wouldn't be a 9 to 5 because we have different time zones. So I don't understand the concept. I understand like our school systems are designed to get everybody accustomed to this. I did a poll recently on my LinkedIn just asking people what their most productive time windows were. Obviously, everyone was different, but some even commented like, it depends on the day, right? You know, I'm in this weird night schedule right now where I've been super creative until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and usually I go to bed at 10. So I wouldn't want to take that away from someone. So I don't understand. I haven't had anybody explain the 9 to 5 to me in a way that makes sense yet. So I don't understand why it's a thing, but I'm open to having my mind changed. I just haven't heard anything compelling.
Time zones just crushes any concept of 9 to 5, doesn't it?
Make
It's
it
like,
make
it's
sense.
not. What time zone are you talking about? Oh, well, we're global. Well, okay, so then there's no such thing as a 9 to 5 because it literally defeats the whole concept of it right there.
Right.
Right. And to me, I love thinking about these things from like just a sociological perspective, just this construct that we're born into and have accepted as the norm. What would happen to even just like our roadways? What, like, traffic would go away, right? Just think about the number of accidents that we have, the people who are underslept that get on the road and drive to work and never make it home. Like there are all these things that would be impacted by remote work that I don't think we really think about. Right? You don't like restaurants, like look at the business that's happening in restaurants because of coffee shops in the morning and lunches that happen near office spaces, right? What if we were just kind of all in and out? Would our meal schedules change? Like these are all questions that I have, and I'm very interested to see the impact over the years as more and more of us do this. You know, I live near the DC Beltway. Does that whole nightmare go away, right? Just the amount of stress that it causes being stuck on the road twice a day for over an hour for some people. What?
Oh my gosh, it's bad. It's bad in every major city. Think of one major city that doesn't have traffic issues. It's like, and we've already seen the statistics of how much time people are saving on the commutes, and it's unbelievable that we've been doing it this long for so long. So,
Well, right. And so many of us starting out in our careers, we're like, we're poor, right? You know, I was a very young mom and I worked very young, started working when I was 14. And the overhead needed for my car to get back and forth to work, if that went away for me, opportunities would have happened. Like doors would have opened for me if I didn't have to get in a car and drive from Annapolis to Silver Spring every day. Would have changed my life fundamentally. And I know for a lot of other people, you can't get to work. You don't make money that day. And sure, this only applies in like corporate type jobs. Like if you have to be physically, if you're in service, it doesn't apply. But just that level of overhead, less cars on the road, right? To me, it checks so many boxes for ways that we're suffering as like a society right now to just remove a lot of it. And then again, coming back to type A Kara, I'm like, it just feels like extra expense and overhead. It's not efficient, right? If I'm spending an hour a day in the car, I'm not producing.
You're not producing. Kara, I got a question in regards to Backroom before we wrap it up with Rick's famous question that he always asks at the end. What are you working on a lot? Because times have changed since you started the company. So first, could you tell us a little bit about what Backroom does and what have you kind of seen changing a little bit when it comes to brand in general?
Positive changes that I've seen really in brand in general, where more and more organizations and clients that we're working with are doing more brand-led marketing. So it turns into less of looking at, you know, impressions and click-through rate and just very specifically bottom line focused, immediate bottom line focused activities where they're more concerned about perception, right? Recall. Are people thinking about us? What do they think about us? So like perception and sentiment are more important now than they've ever been in my career. So that's been a really big piece of it. Of course, user acquisition, sales, bottom line revenue, those are all very important metrics, but they're no longer the end all be all where they used to be for so many of our clients. So people are coming to us now, even from the talent recruitment side, coming in and saying, we want to hire better people. We need to completely restructure our messaging because I want to attract the best talent, right? That's not something I was doing 10 years ago. So that's what we're seeing. And for me, it's obviously validating because I've been a champion of brand-led marketing for a very long time, right? Because that's the human part of the work that we do. And I think it's really important work. I'm hoping it continues to trend more in that direction. I think it can go too far sometimes where brands try to be too human and they're not the same. Like humans are messy, right? And complicated. Brands should be consistent. So I think sometimes like the whole personal brand and corporate brand gets a little blurred in ways that don't make sense to me. But I think people are figuring that out.
Ooh, can you double down a little? Can we tap down a little bit on personal brand and corporate brand? And like I never really thought about that from a standpoint of I'm a CEO of XYZ company. The company wants you to have a personal brand because we all know that people like individuals more than companies. What's that weird relationship between the two? Like, how do you deal with that? Because it is different, right?
It's very different. And people come in wanting to craft this personal brand. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Personal brand, people overthink it. And it's very simple. And I'm going to tell you how simple it is. Personal brand is figuring out the unique value that you bring to a specific subset of people and then giving that value. That's it. If you figure out, hey, this is a level of expertise that I have that helps startups, and I have this formula for what they can do that I wish that I knew back then, you just give it away. That's it. You just help people.
So my personal brand is I help remote work people, and Rick, your personal brand is you have a pimpin' smooth voice.
Indeed.
So how does that conflict with the corporate brand? Just basically like, what's the difference between the personal brand and the corporate brand? So personal brand, just be yourself, kind of find your value and just give that part away. What about the corporate piece?
Yeah, the corporate piece needs to be much more consistent, right? That you need to have, people get into mission, values, purpose. Those are great. You have to have a brand promise. Everything should float around a central brand promise, right? Like Southwest is always going to be the best value, right? What is that core promise that you will always deliver when your technology, service offerings, team, everything else changes around you because those are the things you can't control? What's the one constant? And then stay true to it. It's the consistency, the repetition, that hammer of the same message that's incredibly important in corporate brands because the things that you buy every day, you don't really think about it, right? You just know what to expect. You just have a sense of how you're going to feel in the experience. That's a crafted experience. It takes a lot of time, consistency, and a core promise.
Jeez, I just took some freaking notes.
Hope you're writing that down. I'm still hanging on every word.
Rewind it. Rewind it, son. Hit the rewind button. Rick, this is your show, unless you have a follow-up question.
No, I don't have a follow-up question. We're getting to the part of the show that everybody loves. This is what we're known for here. Can you share with us, Kara, a moment while working remotely that you couldn't possibly ever forget? Whether it's something inspirational or comical, maybe slightly embarrassing. You don't have to go there if you don't want to. However, we're looking for something that you just can't ever forget.
It's actually not something that happened to me. It happened with somebody on my team. I think the trick with remote is that you kind of lose sense of boundaries unless you're really disciplined, right? About figuring out how to manage your time. And my longest person who's been working for me went into labor. And she texted me and said, I'm on the way to the hospital. I'm having contractions, but don't worry. I brought my computer and I'm going to get you that timeline. I called her husband so fast, the way I ran to my phone and said, you need to take her computer and let her birth this child. I will figure the project timeline out. So when you're very type A and dedicated and you're remote, sometimes you forget that it's okay to tap out.
Yeah, don't ever lose touch with that person.
Tap.
That is the most reliable person you will ever know.
Holy shit, I would have given her a raise immediately. Hey, sorry, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm not supporting that type of behavior. Sorry, I had to put my real face on, but holy shit. So did she not send you the time? Like, what did the husband say? I'm just curious.
No, she didn't. She said, well, it's kind of helping me keep my mind off contractions. I said, well, go buy some shoes or something at Nordstrom. Not going anywhere. But it's a great example of, as leaders, how you have to sometimes set boundaries for people too, right?
Good for you. That's super awesome. Rick, can we work for Kara somehow?
I don't know what I'm doing in life. I mean, I just realized my life is a dead end.
Stop it.
Just staring at the brick wall of my future.
Wow, that's a great story.
That is amazing.
Great leadership too. And I'm not just saying that because you're on our podcast. I'm just saying, like, it would have been really easy for a lot of people to be like, well, just be careful. But yeah, go ahead and send them.
But it's not great leadership. And this is where I have beef because it's the bare minimum. The bar is so low for leadership that is a common thing, that someone can be in between contractions finishing a deliverable. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
Agreed. And it's so unfair to say, yeah, you can go have your baby, but I want that report by 5.
The first thing your child sees is an Excel spreadsheet when it comes out. Absolutely not.
Right.
She's all like working. She's like, hang on a second. Oh, wait, are you okay? I'm just having a baby. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Kara, you are an awesome sport for tolerating our juvenile sense of humor.
What an episode. This was great.
I'll tell you what, we're going to be busy for the next couple of weeks just chopping up all these tidbits and nuggets of wisdom. I am so grateful that you could join us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, where can our listeners find you?
The best place for me personally is on my LinkedIn. My username is Kara Redman. You can find our work at backroom.io. But in my featured section of my LinkedIn, I have a lot of free resources for job seekers, for people who are looking to get their start in marketing and branding. There's a course that we have that's self-paced. So there's a lot of different ways to work with us and also ways to learn from us. So go in and see what kind of flavor is interesting to you there.
Flavor.
Thank you.
Love it.
Love the flavor.
Yes.
Yeah, boy. All right. That's a wrap.
Thanks, Kara. You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotelyone.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.